Shotgun with Charlie.
Riding shotgun refers to the practice of sitting next to the driver in a moving vehicle. The term riding shotgun came around after the time of the stagecoach, when somebody used to sit next to the driver holding a shotgun, in case they ran into bandits. My name is Charlie Cook, and I drive a lot. I like to talk to people while I'm driving, so I interview people in my car while I'm driving. Welcome to Riding Shotgun with Charlie. All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to this episode of Riding Shotgun with Charlie. Today we are in Greeley, Pennsylvania, and I have with me Stephen Willeford. We are going to apply some Lead Slingers hand sanitizer. We're going to shake hands, and we're going to talk to Stephen Willeford. It is really super watery. Now, Lead Slingers, I told you. Lead Slingers also makes whiskey. I don't know if you partake.
No, I don't, actually.
That's okay.
Not a whiskey kind of guy. I love Bach, but...
Because it's from Texas.
That's a Texas beer.
Texas beer, yeah. Well, I'll tell you this. The Lead Slingers makes a whiskey, a rye, a bourbon, and a cinnamon bourbon. And they've got into the IPA business recently as well. So they're working their way into the beer. So
they may have a product I might like.
Very cool. Stephen, thank you so much for being on the show.
Thank you very much for having me.
There we go. There you go. Thank you, sir. Now we can shake hands and be cool and official. All right. So everyone knows you because of the incident in Sutherland Springs, Texas, where you ended up using a gun to protect yourself. Not just a gun, but an AR-15. An AR-15, one of those evil. You know what AR stands for?
Yeah. Armor Light Rifle.
It stands for anti-riot.
Anti-riot.
That's what it is. I'm going with anti-riot.
Well, it's actually Armalite Rifle,
it is.
The original creator of the AR.
Of the ARs, exactly. I like to tell people that. I always give them the choice. Is it an American rifle? Is it assault rifle? Is it automatic rifle? I like to use an a-hole remover. but anyway. So let's talk about you. You were a gun guy before all of this happened, obviously, and you're from Texas, so certainly everyone's a gun guy down there.
Absolutely, I love Texas. It's the greatest nation in the world. I mean, the state in the United States.
It is the Republic of Texas.
Yeah.
So, how did you become a gun guy? I mean, obviously, before most people end up using a gun defensively, as you did. It's not like a gun appears in their hand.
Well, I grew up in a dairy, and I tell people I squeezed more tits by the time I was 8 than you will all your life. We had 100 cows that we milked every morning. Yeah, if you don't follow up with that, people get offended real quickly.
Dude, you can't offend me.
But growing up on a dairy, guns were part of life. Mm-hmm. I was taught to shoot with a Remington 513 Scoremaster when I was a very young man. It was my dad's very first rifle.
Wow.
And he taught me how to shoot metal cans at the time, and they weren't aluminum. But he taught me how to shoot metal cans and started me off, and before long I was shooting rabbits for rabbit stew, rabbit chili.
Nice.
I was shooting coyotes to defend our livestock.
Sure.
And when I was 8 years old, he bought me my first shotgun.
Very cool.
To bird hunt with. It was a Winchester youth model break open single shot 410.
Very cool.
And I guess that just cemented my love of guns. I became very good with a gun.
Yeah.
I could outshoot most men as a very young boy.
Because you got those youthful eyes.
I think a lot of it was that we'd go buy a brick of 22s every time we got our allowance, and we worked hard on the dairy for our money. And at the time, a brick of 22s didn't cost that much, so we'd shoot a brick of 22s is 500 rounds. We'd go out and we'd shoot 500 rounds in just a few days.
Oh my gosh, that's cool.
So the more you shoot, the better you're going to get. And so I really learned to shoot well.
Mm-hmm.
And when I was old enough, I saved up enough money. I bought my first rifle and started hunting.
Cool.
And I bought a Marlin 30-30. It was my first rifle.
Nice.
That I actually purchased myself. I used my dad's rifles until I was able to buy my own.
Mm-hmm.
But and then started shooting pistols, and actually I love shooting pistols more than rifles.
Yeah, I'm a handgun guy. Like I like shooting. I like shooting anything, of course, but I got into gun stuff by wanting to wanted to have a gun to be able to protect me and the family, and I was a handgun guy, and I still get confused when people talk AR stuff because there's so many variations between things.
Well, an AR is just the receiver, and you can do so many things with an AR-15. I tell people it's Legos for
Legos
men.
for Legos for gun folks. Yeah, absolutely.
Or I also like to say it's redneck porn. Us rednecks can take an AR-15 receiver and build it into whatever we want, whether it's a competition long-range rifle or a light, short, tactical, quick action rifle,
right?
Or whatever variation you want to build it into, and you can do it yourself.
And that's the best part.
And then when you're done, you say, I built that.
It's my rifle.
That day, the ATF came up and asked me, what kind of rifle did you have, Mr. Willeford? I said, oh, this is going to hurt. I said, it started out life with a Spikes Tactical lower receiver. It has a Wilson's chrome line, chrome molly barrel. He looked at me and said, whoa, wait a minute. He said, did you build your own rifle? I said, I did. And I'm thinking this is a bad thing. He said, cool.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
Oh, okay. As long as we're going down that road, I'm going to say that's good.
Right. So you were an NRA instructor for a while?
I taught a youth shooting club.
Oh, wow. That's cool.
And we became instructors because all the men in our group enjoyed shooting competition.
Yeah.
And we wanted to rope our wives into the competition also. And so what we did is we started a life group from our church that would go to church every Sunday morning, go out to eat lunch together after church, then we would run to the range. And the men got to be NRA instructors so we could instruct the kids. And we would go through and we'd instruct the kids and teach them how to shoot, while the women went and shot a women's league.
Oh, wow.
And when the women were through shooting their league competition, they would come over and pick up all the kids and take them back to the house, and they would start fixing dinner and getting ready for the Bible study afterwards. Then it was the men's turn to shoot, and we would shoot the men's competition.
That's cool.
And we did that for a couple of years straight. In one particularly hot summer, the kids were kind of, do we have to really go out there and shoot? Because it was out in the hot Texas sun and stuff. Well, we're doing this for you guys.
Right.
You don't want to shoot, we don't have to do it anymore.
Yeah.
And so we missed like 3 weeks in a row, and the next thing we get is we get called by the range, the shooting range. I said, look, we don't know whether you know this or not, but when you guys come out and shoot, everybody knows you as the church group.
Really?
And they said, when y'all are out here, the language in the range house cleans up, and more families come to our range.
Really?
They said, we really like the atmosphere in our range when y'all are here. What can we do to bring you back out? It's really hot. We'll set up canopies for the kids now, so you can shoot under canopies for shade.
Are you kidding?
And we told the kids, okay, that's it. We are now a ministry. We're not shooting for us. We're shooters for Christ. We are making a difference. Anything you do for God, if you do it for Him, He'll bless it. And so we were having an effect on people that we had no clue we were having.
That is amazing.
And so we did that for a few years. I trained a young lady, started her training anyway. I can't claim I trained her. I started her training. She had a very big love for guns and a very competitive drive. And she went on when she was 15, and when she was 16, West Point invited her up to teach our cadets how to shoot.
Wow.
She had won like six or eight junior national championships by this time.
Holy moly.
And so West Point asked her to come teach the cadets. If you can imagine this 90-pound blonde, cute little girl,
right,
going up and teaching our cadets how to shoot.
That's amazing.
And then when she turned 17, they got her with Cito Rodriguez, which was a congressman at the time, and said, write her a recommendation. We want her to shoot for the U.S. shooting team.
Wow.
They wrote her a recommendation where she got accepted into West Point, and she won 6 or 8 national championships, and even set women's collegiate national record. Her name was Heather Deppy, and now she's married to another West Point grad. I'm really proud of her. She's one of my girls, and she's a captain in the Army. And I'm proud of my children too. By the way, I can't leave that out. I mean, my kids will kill me. I'm more proud of my children than But Heather's one of mine, and for the shooting world, that's why I'm bringing that up. Is
that's awesome.
Whatever you do that you love to do, involve your children. They would love to get involved with what you do. And if it's shooting, man, teach them to shoot, teach them to be good.
Safe, yeah.
No guys mess with my daughters.
Nice. That's the way it ought to be.
In fact, my son-in-laws say if they're ever in an emergency situation, they're going to hand that pistol to my daughters.
It's more for their... It's more... They need the gun for their safety rather than your daughters. That's cool. All right. Well, let's get into what happened. So you were the story that I remember reading is there was a shooting at a church. Your daughter, I think the story that I got was your daughter ran across the street and said, "Hey, there's."
Well, my daughter first recognized that it was gunfire going off while she was doing dishes.
Yeah.
And she came into my bedroom where I was relaxing, playing on my phone, because I was going to stay home. I was going to start my on-call at the hospital the next day. And so I was going to have to carry a pager and be a beck and call.
Are you a doctor?
No, I'm a plumber.
A plumber, okay.
And people say, what could be an emergency, that plumbing that a hospital might need you? I'm going to say, if you got a 3 million square foot hospital and you got 3 inches of raw sewage running down a hallway in a sterile hospital, that constitutes an emergency.
Absolutely.
So I was going to be on call when we only worked on call 1 out of every 8 weeks. Gotcha. But I was going to have to keep that pager on me 24/7, could be called in at any time to go in, and I typically would get 20 to 30 hours extra that week in the middle of the night or whatever to go take care of issues, because we had 3 million square feet at the hospital itself, and we had another 2 million square feet in clinics and stuff around the city that we were still in charge of. So it's quite a job keeping all that running right. And so
it's a big responsibility. Absolutely.
I had stayed home that day, and my daughter heard the shooting, and she came into the bedroom and said, "Doesn't that sound like gunfire?" Your mind tries to make something common out of something very uncommon, making something normal out of abnormal, and the quicker you get out of that, the better off you be. It's called denial. And right away I said, I think sounds like someone tapping at the window. And I went over and I opened the curtain and looked out. There was nothing there. And she said, come into the kitchen, it's louder in the kitchen. I walked in with her, realized right away it was gunfire then. I ran for my safe. She ran out the door, jumped in her car, and ran up the street to find out what was going on. She was running into gunfire herself. I chewed her out later about that. I was angry. I said, what are you doing, girl? You could have got yourself killed.
Yeah.
And I sat there and yelled at her, don't ever do that again. And then after I walked out of the room, she was in tears. She was crying. And one of my buddies put his big arm around me and said, now you go back in there and apologize to her. I said, but do you know what she did? I said, yeah. He said, yeah, I know what she did. Her problem is she's too much like her old man. Now go apologize to her. And he was right. We all have that one friend that sets you straight and makes sure that you know the impact of what you're doing. And so he set me right, and I went and apologized to my daughter. But I ran to my safe. I grabbed a gun out of the safe, ran to the next room, opened up a box of ammunition, and grabbed a handful and started poking rounds into the magazine. And it was just a handful. And I called my wife and I said, where are you at? And she was working at my other daughter's house. We were building it from the ground up ourselves, to make it less expensive to build a house. And my wife was taping and floating the walls at the time. And she saw me at Rachel's house taping and floating the walls. What's wrong? She could hear the panic in my voice, and I said, there's a shooter shooting up the church. And she said, don't go over there, and I hung up on her.
You didn't listen to your wife?
Oh, she told me, she said, I knew you were going over there.
That's why she said no.
She knows me. She knows me. And if she would have had time to think, she would have known that I had to. People ask me how I could do what I did, and what I always ask them is, how could you not? How could you sit there and listen to gunfire and know that it's aimed at one of your neighbors, one of your friends? I'm fourth generation in the same little community. I know those people.
Yeah,
there's less than 600 people in Sutherland Springs, and I'm fourth generation there. Some of them knew my great-grandparents. And there was a crazy man murdering them. How could you not run over them? Yeah. You have choices in life. And people ask me, how could knowing how it's changed your life, would you have done anything different? And my reply to that is, that man changed my life that day, no matter what I would have chosen. The difference is, I chose how he changed my life instead of letting him. Because if I would have done nothing and stayed in my house in safety, no one would have blamed me. No one would have known who I was.
Right.
But in the morning when I wake up and I put my pants on and I walk into the bathroom and I look at the mirror, I don't think that I could have lived with a man looking back in the mirror without saying, you coward, your community was being murdered and you did nothing. I'll live with my decisions.
Okay.
But I don't want to live with that.
Right, with not doing something.
I don't think I could have lived with that.
That's a tough one to carry. So what happened next? You grabbed the rifle?
Grabbed a rifle, I ran out, and my daughter followed me out. I told her, go back in the house and load me another magazine. I said, I just got a handful of ammunition, go load me a magazine. She followed me out the door. And again, I didn't want her following me across the street and being another target for him.
Sure.
I didn't need the distraction He already had too many targets I cared deeply about. I didn't want my own daughter to be one of them. And I didn't want her to see me fail if I would have failed also. Because she would have run to my side and he would have killed her next. I ran across the street, and as I ran across the street, I yelled out. And I truly believe that it was the Holy Spirit calling out from me and calling out a demon that was in him, because he had just shot Chris Workman in the back, and Chris went down paralyzed from the waist down. He shot Chris's mother through the breast and was walking over to execute him at point blank range when he heard me yell out. Chris heard me. He stopped what he was doing immediately. It would have just taken him another 2 seconds to finish him off. But he stopped what he was doing immediately and walked out and started shooting at me. Which, he dropped his rifle in the church and came out with his pistol and started shooting at me, and I ran behind a pickup truck, and he hit the truck in front of me. He shattered the windshield of the car behind me, and he put bullet holes in the house behind me also.
Wow.
He had on Class 3 body armor, and for your viewers, Class 2 body armor is generally what police carry, and they'll stop pistols. Class 3 body armor will stop rifles. It was my worst nightmare. He had on a ballistic, bulletproof SWAT-style helmet.
Wow.
And I hit him in the left chest, I hit him in the abdomen, he kept coming. But this time he quit shooting at me because I had hit him and he felt it. He turned to his side, and I was able to put one between his plates. He has a front plate and a back plate, nothing on the sides. I was able to put one through the side, high in his side, and I was able to put one in his legs. He got into his vehicle, which was sitting in the middle of the street with the driver's side door open and the engine running. Had his getaway already planned.
Wow.
And he got into his vehicle, and he slammed the door, and he put 2 shots with his pistol through the side window. And I saw those holes open up, the glass falling. Everything was in slow motion. I couldn't see him from the reflection of the glass in the sun, but I put one where I perceived his head to be, and it split across his forehead from what the coroner's report said.
Wow.
He accelerated, turned the corner, and gunned the engine and was running as fast as his vehicle would carry him away from me. By the time I got in the middle of the street, he was about 150 yards away, and I put one more shot through the back window. It shattered. The police say that went through the back window, went through the driver's side seat, hit him just right of the shoulder blade as he sped over the hill out of sight. And I'm standing in the middle of the streets, and it can't end this way. He's getting away. And I turned and I looked to my left, and there was a guy in a pickup truck on his cell phone, stopped at the stop sign. And I ran over and tapped on the window. Johnny had seen the whole thing. I didn't know Johnny's name. I didn't know Johnny. I'd never seen him before. He had witnessed the whole shootout and was calling 911. He was on the phone with 911. I ran over and I tapped on the window and said, that guy just shot up the Baptist church and we got to stop him. Every sane man in this world would have just accelerated, left me at the stop sign, and just drove on. You know, he had just watched a shootout, and one of the shooters comes running over and taps on the window and said, that guy just... Every sane person would have just drove away.
Yeah.
But this is Texas. We're not known for our sanity. We're a little bit crazy, not known for our sanity. And the next thing I heard were the locks come unlocked on Johnny's truck. Climbed in the cab of the truck with a long, tall Texan, white hat, feathers sticking out of his hat, toothpick hanging out of his mouth. I mean, it almost sounds like a cartoon.
No kidding.
He had a skull of a longhorn steer tattooed in the middle of his neck, and the horns run up underneath his ears.
Oh my gosh.
That's Johnny. That's Texas.
That's Texas.
He never said a word to me. He was on the phone, one hand on the steering wheel. He turned the corner and accelerated as fast as he could, telling 911 we're in pursuit.
Oh my gosh.
I dropped the magazine out because now I'm thinking, I don't know how many rounds I fired. Yeah. I don't know how many rounds I loaded. I need to, while I'm en route here, I need to see what my condition is.
Right.
Drop the magazine out. I'm looking at one round in the top of the magazine, one in the chamber, and he's still got on class 3 body armor.
Wow.
We rocketed down the road, passing road after road, they put us straight into dispatch. And as we passed a road, we'd tell them the name of the road and such. And at first we didn't even see him, and Johnny had it on the floor. We were running at breakneck speed, and came around the corner and over the top of the hill, and then we saw him. I said, that's him. Gray Ford Explorer, the back windshield knocked out. That's him. Mm-hmm. We're catching him. Now reality's setting in. We're catching a maniac loaded for bear, and I got 2 rounds left.
Wow.
And I turned and looked, and again, I didn't know Johnny's name or anything. I looked at him, and he hadn't said a word to me yet. I looked at him, I said, you know, if you catch him, you're going to have to put him off the road. And Johnny turned to me, just real calmly looked at me, one hand up on the steering wheel, one on the phone, and he looked at me and said, yep, I already figured that.
Wow.
I'm thinking, oh my God, who am I riding with? And Johnny's probably thinking, I always wanted to try a pit maneuver. God bless Johnny. Man. As we came up to him, he pulled off the road into the ditch with a street sign in front of him. It was a curve sign right in front of his vehicle, and he's off in the ditch, and Johnny pulled up right behind him, still on the pavement. And I put the passenger side window down, stuck the rifle out, and opened the door with my left hand. I was pushing the door open. I was going to step out and use the door as a shield and re-engage with him. And just before my foot hit the pavement, he accelerated again, took the sign out, it flipped over the vehicle, went right back up on the pavement, and Johnny accelerated. I barely got my foot in the door before Johnny was after him, and we chased him another 3/4 of a mile up the road, and this time he veered off the left-hand side, through a fence, and about 50 yards out into a field. And I tell Johnny, I said, just get down below the dash, stay out of this. You had no gun, nothing. Right. Just stay down below the dash. And I get out of the truck, and I walk over and I put my rifle across the hood of the truck. Mm-hmm. And start yelling out, get out of the truck, get out of the vehicle, get out, get out. And with a few 4-letter words that I'm not accustomed to saying. But I was a little bit mad.
They were emphasizing words.
I wanted him to know how angry I was.
I wanted to know you were serious, yeah.
And Johnny gets out of the vehicle and does whatever a millennial would do.
Oh my gosh, are you kidding?
He was videoing me with his phone.
Wow.
Live streaming on Facebook.
Oh my God.
I'm like, really? That's what you want to do now?
Right, this is it.
This is your decision. Okay.
Wow.
I waited 5 to 7 minutes. Police were 5 to 7 minutes behind me. My community didn't have 5 to 7 minutes left.
No, not at all.
Not with a maniac with an AR-15 and a pistol. And it turned out he had multiple loaded magazines and other guns in his truck, in his vehicle. And I sat there 5 to 7 minutes, and the next thing I heard, after yelling, "Where are the police?" a couple of times. I never wanted to see red and blue lights more in my life. And I'm so focused down there and what's going on, you know, and not seeing any movement or anything. And 5 to 7 minutes was like an eternity.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
And then I hear, "Driver, get out of your vehicle with your hands up." turned to my left and looked up the road, and there was an officer standing there behind his door to his police cruiser, pistol in his right hand and a microphone in his left. He keyed the mic and said it again: "Driver, get out of the vehicle with your hands up." I'm going to tell your viewers, when the police get there, if you're ever in this situation, when the police get there, comply.
Get out of the vehicle.
Make sure that he knows you're the good guy.
Yeah.
And I don't know if he knows who I don't know what he knows. So I laid the rifle on the hood of the truck and I started back to the back of the truck, hands up, palms out. Here we go. That officer wants to go home. I want to make sure I get home too.
Yeah.
And so I'm walking back to the back of the truck, and he looked at me, made eye contact, keyed the mic again, said, "Not you."
Oh my gosh.
Gotcha. Turned around and walked back, picked the rifle up, stuck it over the hood, and waited for more police officers to show up. And this time they showed up. They pulled out AR-15s and stuff. And I'm like, okay, I'm indeed done. And I took my rifle off the hood of the truck. I laid it on Johnny's toolbox. Now I'm trying to stand with my feet in the shadows because I didn't put shoes on. I was barefoot.
Whoa.
You don't have time to put shoes on when something like this is happening.
Right.
And so I'm trying to, and it's 90 degrees. And I know most of your viewers don't understand. In Texas, November 5th, it was 90 degrees and the pavement was cooking my feet. Adrenaline's gone now. My feet are getting hot, and I'm trying to keep them in the shade of Johnny's truck.
Yeah.
And they're 50 yards behind me at the police line, and he's another 50 yards away from me the other way. And 45 minutes, 45 minutes, and I still don't know what's going on. And they're not advancing on the vehicle or anything. I didn't know it, but they were waiting for a drone so they could fly a drone over and look in the vehicle, see what the situation was.
Yeah.
He had ended up shooting and killing himself in the end, but we didn't know that at the time.
Sure.
And so I'm finally decided I'm going to dart back to the police line, and I started to run, and they said, no, stay where you're at. We'll bring a police cruiser up so you can use it for cover to get back here. And so they brought a police cruiser, and then I just kind of ran beside it real low until it got back to the police line. Now I'm at the police line, barefoot, and I look 200 yards up the road, and I can see my wife. There's a fire truck that has blocked all the traffic to stop anybody from getting down to where all this is going on. And I can see my wife's car, and I know she's there. And a police officer walks by, and I said, "Excuse me, can I call my wife?" "Sure, go ahead, call your wife." I said, "No, can I use your phone to call my wife?" "Oh, you don't have a phone?" I looked down, and I said, "I got no shoes on. I didn't bring a phone." "Oh, well, sure, and I almost called you U.S. Law Shield, instead of calling my wife. It's like, but I called my wife and I said, "I need shoes. My feet are hot." She said, "Well, you can have my Crocs." And I'm thinking, well, they'll stick my ankles, my heels will be that far off. I mean, I'll take anything. At this point, I asked the officer, I said, "Can I go back there and get my wife's shoes so I have shoes?" "No, you need to stay here." I'm like, "But my feet are hot." And he looks at me, opens up the back door to his squad car and says, "Well, you can sit in the back of my car." "No, I'm good." "Not a problem. I won't ask again." But I figured I was
want to get in the back of a police car.
I was going to jail, but didn't want to make it easy. I wanted to make them cuff and stuff. I'm not going to just voluntarily sit in the back of the car and let them shut the door. Those things don't open from the inside.
They do not. From what I've heard.
Yeah, from what I heard, yes. So I was like, "No, I'm good," But ended up, they flew a drone over. They figured out that he'd shot himself, and I was there 4 hours. They wouldn't let me leave. I gave my statement to 5 different law enforcement offices, and I will tell you, U.S. Law Shield will tell you, don't do that. Don't give a statement. Tell them you're willing to comply.
Right.
But you want to speak to your lawyer.
Oh, okay.
Okay, because you might say something that might sound like the story changes.
Right.
Because your adrenaline level is running so high, and they give even police officers 48 hours before they make a statement.
Right. You could say something that they can and will use against you in the court of law.
Exactly, but I had diarrhea of the mouth.
Oh, man.
And it just ran. And I gave my statement to 5 different, and they all knew from witnesses at the church and around the town what had happened.
Mm-hmm.
And so finally, after 4 hours, they tell me, you can go. And I started making that long 200-yard walk back to my wife's car.
With no shoes.
And a very pleasant-looking lady about my age called out from behind me as I'm walking down the street. She said, Mr. Willeford, I need to speak with you for a minute. I turned around and she was there, and she gave me a big bear hug. And she said, I had friends in that church. And I said, how bad is it? And her response was really bad. And she said, thank you for what you did. And she said, I want you to take my card, and if you need anything from me, just call me. I'm the Wilson County DA. Oh, give me that card.
Right, I could use that.
Holy smokes, maybe I'm not going to jail today.
That's incredible.
It was horrible. He murdered 26 of my friends, my neighbors.
Mm-hmm.
He wounded 20 more. Like Chris Workman will never walk again. Chris Workman has a little 7-year-old daughter. She's 7 now. She was 5 at the time. Name's Edie. She's just a ball of fire. Beautiful young wife that grew up with my kids. And was in the same homeschool co-op with my kids and spent time at my house with my kids.
Yeah.
And Chris will never walk again. He had Julie Workman, his mother, was an emergency room nurse. And as soon as the shooter left, she got up and started tying tourniquets and saving lives in the church before the first EMS got there. The first officer that was on the scene at the church, his name's Hank Farnett. He looks like he's all of 15 years old. And Hank had been buying trauma kits for a squad car out of his own pocket.
Wow.
And his fellow officer said, what are you planning with all these trauma kits? Are you thinking that there's going to be a mass shooting? And he would always tell him, you never know, and you prepare for everything. That day when he ran into the church with his AR-15 ready to do battle, soon as he figured out that the shooter was gone, he ran back out, opened up the trunk of his car, and distributed trauma kits to other officers and people that were on the scene, and they were able to tie tourniquets, real tourniquets, Israeli bandages, clotting chemicals, and save lives because he was prepared. The very hospital that I work for, University Hospital in San Antonio, one of the 2 level 1 trauma centers in San Antonio, was having a mass shooting drill that day on a Sunday.
No.
And they had all the doctors and nurses on hand, on duty. And they were all complaining, why are we having a drill on a Sunday when we could be spending time with our families at church? But since they were all hands on deck, the moment the real call came out, they were able to get all 20 ORs up and running because they were there before the first victim of the shooting showed up.
Unbelievable.
If you can't see God's hand in all of this, you're willfully blind. My community means so much to me. and I believe that I was there for a purpose. Normally I would have been sitting in a church pew 40 miles away.
Right.
but I wasn't that day.
This kind of stuff can happen at any time. I belong to a public Toastmasters, and I did a speech this past winter after. Oh my gosh! It was another place in Texas. It was the Jack Wilson.
Jack Wilson, yes.
Right, and I called it the Tale of Two Churches, and I talked about your incident and how there was not someone in the church that had a firearm on them, and then I talked about Jack Wilson, and I said there was a person in the church that had a firearm on him, and the difference is someone wasn't there. 20 people were shot, 27 people were killed, and in the other one, what, 2 or 3 people?
Two people died.
Two people died.
Well, two people and the shooter died.
I never count the shooter. That's just my policy. But I said that's the difference between being armed and being prepared, and not being armed and not being prepared.
And that's a fact. At least I was not in there, but at least I got there as fast as I could.
Yeah. That is incredible.
And Jack and his team started training a month and a half after Sutherland Springs.
Oh my gosh.
They started training because of what happened in Sutherland Springs.
Unbelievable.
And I encourage all churches to have a plan. Absolutely, you have to have a plan. You have to be ready, because you never know what's going to happen. It'll never happen here.
Right.
Understand, Sutherland Springs entire population is under 600 people. When I talked to the Texas Rangers after this was over, the Texas Rangers said, if somebody would have told us in 2 weeks there's going to be a mass shooting at a church in Texas, Sutherland Springs would have been the last place they looked for that shooting.
Oh, of course. 600 people in the whole town. I'm exhausted just listening to it.
It's so tragic, but I want to say I prefer not to focus as much on the tragedy as I do what God does with tragedy. That day, do the math. 26 people were murdered. 20 more were wounded. 7 people walked out of the church without a bullet. 53 people in the church that morning. And even during COVID, we now have 200 regular attendees to our church.
Wow. That's great.
And we live stream in Africa and South America and all over the world, and people are willing to listen to a message from a little church in a community of 600 people.
That's amazing. That is amazing.
What the devil means for evil, God can change into something glorious for him.
Wow.
That's what I truly believe.
Yeah. So what have you... I don't want to move on. What have you been doing since then? You had to run for office.
I did run for office.
All right, let me go back. What did you do since then? So you go home from this incredible experience. Like, how do you resume?
Well, the Lieutenant Governor of Texas came and wanted a meeting with me 2 days after the shooting. After I'd met Mike Pence and Ted Cruz and John Cornyn and Jeff Sessions and Henry Cuellar, and they all came to Sutherland Springs. Well, the next day, next day, Dan Patrick, the Lieutenant Governor of Texas, came and he wanted a meeting with me. And Dan Patrick met me in another little church close by. And he said, Mr. Willeford, he said, we are going to treat you like an officer involved in a shooting. He said, we're going to give you mandatory time off and we are going to require you to go to post-shooting counseling. I'm like, wait, I know you're Lieutenant Governor, but I work for a hospital. He said, I'm going to go talk to the CEO of the hospital after I leave you. He said, I think they'll see it our way. He said, besides, if they choose not to pay you for the next 3 weeks, we will. The state of Texas will. We're going to take care of you. And they did. And they sent me to the post-shooting counseling. And I don't know what to expect from counseling, so go walk in. This is the counselor for the Texas Rangers, which is known worldwide as being the elite of police force.
Yeah.
Everybody knows Walker, Texas Ranger, all the movies that have been made about the Texas Rangers. And they truly are law enforcement at its best, and truly gentlemen and truly good officers. And I go in and I sit down with the counselor, and she said, Mr. Willeford, you're going to have to get used to a new normal. Let's wait. I love my old normal.
Right.
I love where I am in life. I'm going to be a grandfather for the very first time. I love my family. I mean, my kids are wanting to build on my property that I own. I'm living the dream. I'm retired from 34 years of construction. I've got a good job as a plumber in maintenance. And that salary goes on top of my retirement. I'm making more money than I ever have. I'm good.
Right.
I want my old normal.
Yeah.
And she said, Mr. Willeford, that's going away. You're going to have to get used to a new normal. And I said, what's my new normal going to be? And just like every psychiatrist, she answers, well, that depends on you.
Oh, jeez.
That's not what I want to hear. I want somebody to tell me.
Right.
Where's my life going from here?
Yeah.
Not all of it has been good, and not all of it's been bad. But I'm dealing with a new normal. And I met with the president twice. Second time I got called to meet with the president, I told everybody I am truly Forrest Gump. And I got to meet the president again. I almost told him, I gotta go pee. I thought, okay, I'm not gonna go there.
Right.
So,
I mean, I'm sure the president pees too.
But just like Forrest Gump, the president called me out on stage at the NRA convention, and I spoke before 70,000 people with the President of the United States, the most powerful man in the world, standing 3 foot to my right and 4 foot behind me.
Oh my gosh.
And I'm walking out on the stage, and I looked up and said, God, really? This is what you got planned for me? It's like, how can a plumber from South Texas, just a common redneck, be walking out on a stage called out by the President of the United States?
That's amazing.
What an honor.
Yeah.
And now I'm in Pennsylvania. This is the 4th trip to Pennsylvania in a year.
Oh my gosh.
To speak. I speak for a living. Please.
That's incredible.
Contact me.
Yeah.
I really need that. By the way, this is my new life. Help me out here. It's like,
help a brother out.
Yeah, help a brother out. Stephen Willeford, StephenWilleford.com.
StephenWilleford.com. We've got a couple minutes left before we're back at the Tommy Gun Warehouse, and we don't have a lot of time left on one of these cameras, so that's how people can find you. What else would you like to say in the last 2 minutes we have here?
Practice, practice, practice. Be prepared. Be a fire extinguisher. Get charged up and practice and hang on the wall. like a fire extinguisher and pray you never get used until you expire. A fire extinguisher hangs on the wall and waits for a fire. 90% of the fire extinguishers in this world will expire before they're ever used in an actual fire. But they're there ready in case the fire happens. Train, go shoot, buy a gun, know your gun, train, be ready, and hope someday you expire before something actually happens.
That's incredible.
And nobody wants this, but if it happens, be that person that would step up and stop the mayhem. Be that person that said, I am it. I tell people I am not afraid of death because every one of us will die one day. Why fear the inevitable? What I fear more than death is to get to my Lord, my God, my Maker, Creator, and Him to ask me, why didn't you do what I told you to do when I told you to do it? When I'm standing before my Creator, I want to hear, well done, good and faithful servant.
Amazing. That's a perfect ending. And we're right where we need to be. All right. Stephen Willeford, do you have a fan Facebook page or a public?
I have a public speaker page, and my public speaker page is Good Gun Willie.
Yeah. Thank you.
Good Gun Willie is my public speaker page.
Yep.
And then I have just my regular personal page, Stephen Willeford. Public page, or private page rather, and which, by the way, Facebook shut me down, kicked me off, and booted me. My old one is gone, so if you guys want to get a hold of me now, I used to have 5,000 followers at my limit.
Yeah.
Now I'm down to 200 members trying to rebuild.
Oh my gosh.
So
yeah, I looked at my messages.
They took me out.
I looked at my messages and saw that we weren't friends, but I know we messaged each other, and it was through one of the public pages, or one of your professional pages.
Yeah. So if you want to get on my private page again,
it's wide open.
It's wide open. I've got plenty of room for new friends, and for my old friends that are out there that just heard. That's why I haven't heard from him. I didn't boot you guys. I got booted.
Oh my God!
Imagine that. Facebook's doing whatever it wants to do.
Facebook stuff.
Yeah.
Stephen, thank you so much for being on the show. This is an honor and a privilege to have someone like you, and to spend some time hearing your story.
Well, thank you very much for having me on.
Thank you.
I appreciate it.
I got to close things out here. So, ladies and gentlemen, thanks for watching this episode of Riding Shotgun with Charlie. Please make sure that you like and share and subscribe all of the Riding Shotgun stuff. You can find us on YouTube, on Gunstreamer. You can find us on the Ops Lens app. You can also listen to the show on Apple Podcasts, on Spotify, on iHeartRadio. And please support all the Riding Shotgun with Charlie. Please share it with everybody. Also, make sure you check out the Self-Defense Radio Network, SDRN.us. That is all of your pro-freedom podcasts in one place. And this is how we get the stagecoach across America. Thank you so much, man. This was great.
Thank you very much.
We'll see you guys next time.
Bye-bye.